So I'm going to be talking a little bit about the intersection between what we've seen more recently in the Sahel region, in Mali in particular, with what we've seen in the recent past in North Africa earlier in last decade. So just as the Islamic State branches previously carried out governance activity functions in Syria, Iraq, and Libya, the Islamic State in Mali sort of began doing so in the Monaco region, dating back to before April 2023 and its takeover there. So for example, in October 2022, IS members distributed medicine in multiple localities. Moreover, they started distributing Qurans to the population, informing citizens or residents, I should say, that they'd be expected to pay the religious zakat tax. One of the interesting markers that we saw of them extending sort of their influence ideologically was in mid-April this year when IS fighters in various locations distributed a leaflet that they have called "This is Our Creed and Methodology," and gathered citizens to explain IS's belief system, essentially. This same leaflet was originally distributed across Syrian villages back in 2013 to increase public support or else compliance with the new rulers. So you could see that there's this extension going back a decade already. And since then, we've seen a number of cases where IS has been involved in moral policing activities locally, and people have lost limbs as a consequence. Now, to sort of give context to the type of potential activities we could see, I'm going to go back in history to Tunisia, where you had this group called Ansar al-Sharia there, which was active from 2011 to 2013. And you might be wondering, what does Tunisia then have to do with Mali now? Well, many of the Tunisians who were a part of this group became key practitioners of the governance administration within IS in Syria, where they first started everything when they left Tunisia. And then afterwards, they went on to Libya and helped build up the capacities of IS in Libya from 2014 to 16. And then after IS in Libya lost its territory, a number of Tunisians then went down south into Mali. So you could see that there's sort of this advancement in activity over time, as well as pushing different ideas, resources, and knowledge across space and time. So while in the Tunisian context, of course, there's different types of religious dynamics than maybe farther south in the Sahel, where it touches on more indigenous religions, as well as Christianity alongside other Sunnis that they might disagree with. In the case of Tunisia, AST for short, focused on the Sufis, the Shia locally, as well as Sunnis they felt were deviating from the true message of Islam. So in regards to Sufism, a lot of attacks happened against different religious sites. So for example, one was attacked in March and October 2012 in the town of Manuba, which is just outside of the capital in Tunis. And they distributed pamphlets condemning the so-called blasphemous practices of venerating saints, which then led to setting fire to some of these Sufi shrines. Similarly, in the town of Menzel Bouzalfa, a rural area outside of Tunis, they also desecrated another mausoleum that was Sufi in nature. Similarly, we saw a number of attacks against Shia Muslim in Tunisia, even though they are less than 1% of the population, illustrating that even that amount of people believing in an alternative belief system is seen as a threat to them. So in late August 2012, for example, there were 3 disruptions targeted against Iranian Shia-linked cultural events in Kairouan, which is in sort of the central part of Tunisia. They prevented the performance of a Shia concert due to its chants, which they perceived as violating sacred values. On the same date in Bizerte, which is north of the capital, AST members armed with swords and other blunt instruments interrupted an Iran-sponsored Jerusalem Day celebration and attacked Samir Kuntar, who is an important ally of Iran and Hezbollah, who has since been killed in Israeli drone strike in Syria. The day after this occurred, Abu Ayyad al-Tunisi, the leader of AST, denounced the, quote, malignant conquest of Shia in Tunisia and urged at the same time to stop any kind of Shiitization of the country and to fight against the enemies of Islam in his Eid al-Fitr sermon. And only a few days after that speech, AST members attacked Shia in Gabes, another town outside of Tunisia, while protesting alleged Iranian influence. Again, it should be reiterated that Shia are less than 1% of the population in Tunisia. So I don't see what kind of threat it was, but now you can imagine how that might then transfer over to other religions in other areas where the percentage is way higher, what you might see in the southern part of the Sahel region. Another angle to this is also related to gender issues within the Sunni practice itself. So students at a local university in Gabes demanding the separation of men and women in classes at the university, you know, confronting administrations in different places like Sousse, because women weren't allowed to wear the full body niqab, then also harassing secular female teachers because they're not wearing the niqab. In one case, shouting at a teacher in Tunis, quote, "She's free to decide if she wishes to wear the hijab or not, but if she is going to teach, she must wear it," end quote. And you saw similar types of things elsewhere related to women's dress. So this is something that's important for those within this movement in terms of policing gender in many regards, even if it doesn't have to do with other religious groups or other sects within Islam, but even within Sunni Islam itself. So it's important to remember that this issue of religious freedom is an intra-religious issue as well. And then finally, just to conclude, because I know that we're short on time, there are another number of violent incidents and intimidations related to the sales of alcohol and opening of restaurants during Ramadan when individuals are supposed to be fasting. They repeatedly attempted to burn down bars and liquor stores in different cities like Sidi Bouzid and Janduba. There are also attacks on hotels and individuals selling alcohol. In one case, ASC members even cut off the 4 fingers off of a man in Manuba, just outside of Tunis, because of this, and forced a restaurant to close in the Nasser neighborhood in Ariana, north of Tunis, after they threatened to break everything because it was open during Ramadan. So again, reiterating that this isn't just about these jihadi movements being against other religions in of itself, but also against those within Sunni Islam that might not be perceived to be living as stringently as these jihadi actors. And just to conclude, these ideas within Tunisia that were breeded in 2011 to 13, then moved to Syria in 2013-14 when they were first building up the caliphate there. And then they were directed towards Libya when they wanted to take over territory there from 14 to 16. And then after the fall of that, a number of these Tunisians then went down south to Mali and helped out with activities there as well. So that's why it's important to understand what happened previously and how that then connects, because one of the things that's so important with understanding the jihadi movement in general is that there are these historical networks that continue over the years, and we miss that there's a deep bench of individuals that might not be the top leaders, but are in the middle of these organizations, but keep the institutional knowledge going across various theaters over time. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.